Guys, welcome back to another video. As I'm recording this, we've either announced Rayan Cherki, it's about to be announced, or Fabrizio's done his thing, essentially. Either way, it looks like we've got this player, hence why I'm doing this video. I think I've only ever done one of these videos when it's not happened. I think that was Kalidou Koulibaly many years ago. I've learnt my lesson, so I think we're in safe hands right now. And we're in safe hands with the guest alongside me today, Mr. Alex Barker from The Athletic, formerly known as Euro Expert. I was actually searching that handle, by the way, I was trying to find you. I didn't even realise you changed it. How you doing, Alex? You okay, mate?
Yes, I'm doing good. I mean, bar that bowed omen aside about video being done before the deal potentially being announced, but hopefully we're all good.
No,
Um,
that was many years ago, and I was getting a bit carried away. I've learned my lesson now. Just wait for Fabrizio Romano, basically. Then we're all good. This is a very exciting one for me because I think this is probably the most excited I've ever been to talk about a footballer that's potentially signing Manchester City because it just feels like the kind of signing Man City don't make. Maybe I'm wrong with that, and maybe we'll discuss that later. But there's something magic about this footballer. There's something mercurial. There's a four-letter word. It's all over Twitter. Aura. There is that about him. He has that sort of magic touch, and I can't wait to talk about him in a little bit more detail. I think I know you're a fan, but I want to get your general feeling away from my influence, which is going to be hard because I'm going to be giddy. But I'll start, if that's all right, Alex, with your just initial reaction without covering too much. Your initial reaction to the Cherki Man City link.
um, my initial reaction, I think, was much like other people's, and something you've just touched on there, which was, oh wow, this does kind of feel a bit unlike Manchester City. This doesn't feel like a move I would have expected them to make. Cherky's been talked about for years as a luxury player, and as we'll talk about in this, I wouldn't necessarily push against that so much. So Manchester City coming in for him is very interesting in normal times, but after the season you guys have just had, where you've had consistent issues out of possession, and there's been consistent criticisms of Rayan Cherki's work out of possession, it was very much like a left field shout for me, especially after City were chasing Florian Wirtz. Like, really, Cherki to City? But then the next immediate reaction to that is, okay, well, I'm on board with that. I just want Rayan Cherki to be, at the best environment he possibly can be. And if he's going to be working under Pep Guardiola, I don't think there's a man, I don't think there's anybody in football who can't be excited about that. Or maybe there will be. As there's some people who think maybe Turkey will be ruined, and I'm looking forward to hopefully dispelling that.
I think there's a sort of is it an adjective or verb? I can't remember. But you can get people think you can get Jack Grealished, and like that is such a that to me that is a myth. I think that's a very isolated particular set of circumstances related to Jack Grealish as a player. I think he was just probably not suited to his game wasn't necessarily suited. But I think people are scared of that. You know, there'll be a million passes sideways. I think there's plenty of evidence to the contrary. You know, Kevin De Bruyne not exactly ruined. You know, Lionel Messi did all right. You could argue. You know, there's lots of very special footballers who played under Guardiola. So I think people any reason to take a swipe at Pep usually sticks. But yeah, I felt very similar, mate. Like I did never see this in a million years. You know, Florian Wirtz made more sense, but Ryan Cherki, this guy who has this reputation, very much, he's like seen as the ultimate luxury player almost. Like it felt like never going to happen, but here we are. And I also want to talk about how we've got here because like this is not the first time this guy's made waves. He's been around for an awful long time, hasn't he? You know, it's like I felt like look. I was convinced in my head he was 24 years old when I started, investigating the link because it feels like he's been around forever. He turns 22 in August, so he's only 21 still, but he's been playing football for a long time. How has his career developed, over the past like 7 years since his debut at Lyon, and I guess a broader extension of that is why has it clicked now, so to speak? Because obviously talent beforehand, but it feels like this is his breakout season.
That's a great question, and that's going to set me up for a lovely monologue on the history of Rayan
I'm gonna
Cherki.
get a coffee, mate. Go for it.
So Rayan Cherki, he really starts breaking through in 2019-20, and obviously he's only played at Lyon throughout his career. And you have to remember that Lyon, they're a very big French club in the 2000s. They have moderate success in the 2010s, but you can really chart their weakest performances in the 21st century since the debut of Rayan Cherki. Those two things are not linked. But just to
Wow,
make
I was
that clear,
cursed.
but it's just unfortunate for him. So Cherki breaks through in 2019-20. That's a year Ligue 1 gets cancelled, and he only makes a handful of appearances. Following year, he starts breaking into the first team. His coach at this point is Rudy Garcia. Rudy Garcia is quite an old school French manager. Recently got sacked by Napoli. Did have some success early in the 2010s. But yeah, Cherki starts breaking through a little bit here, and as you mentioned, this is at the time where everyone starts going, wow, this is the superstar footballer. He's built for the top. He's the next Messi, blah, 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 blah.
Yeah,
And even in the numbers, he's topping the charts for things like successful dribbles or attempted dribbles. But sometimes, I think off the top of my head, he's like close to 10 attempted dribbles per 90 in his early seasons. It's
which is
like
wild.
top,
Yeah,
yeah,
Doku
it's
numbers
top list.
basically.
Yeah, I mean, higher in the docu numbers, arguably.
Yeah, yeah,
So Rudy Garcia, he leaves the end of 2021. Peter Bosz comes in. Peter Bosz, Lyon, not a very good match. Peter Bosz is a very attacking manager. Uh, he's sometimes I wonder if he can spell the word defense. Definitely don't think he can. He knows what the word rest defense is, and he's Cherki does get into the team a bit more, but Leon's performances again start to plummet. And the reason I'm giving you this context is it's going to become relevant in about 18 months' time in this timeline. So we're around 2022. In the 2022-23 season, Laurent Blanc replaces Peter Bosz midway through the season. Again, Lyon are stumbling here, so this is a really tumultuous time. And again, Laurent Blanc, personally, I'm not particularly praising of Peter Bosz. I know he's done very good stuff at PSV, but in terms of how these teams defend, it's not brilliant. Laurent Blanc, again, another very old school French manager, was managing PSG in like 2014, right?
yeah.
So not a lot of modern ideas coming in. Cherky takes a bit of time out of the first team, starts getting back in, and is getting more minutes for Lyon, and seems like he's taking a bit more of a big role. Unfortunately, I think it takes too large of a role because over the summer of 2023, Laurent Blanc is still in charge, but the situation around Lyon grows a bit more toxic. If I remember correctly, there's complaints about players leaving during this time. I think Castello de Cabra is one actually. Um, the situation around Lyon goes more toxic. Laurent Blanc gets off to a bad start, and I vividly remember um, Lyon fans. You might have even seen the video. Lyon ultras like shaming their team, and one of the players in shot near the front is Rayan Cherki. At this point, he is, one of Lyon's most expensive, like most valuable players. He's one of the most recognizable players. He's gone from prospect to kind of being thrown into the first team, and a first team that starts rapidly going downhill. Laurent Blanc gets sacked. Fabio Grosso comes in. Um, his achievement is Lyon go near the relegation zone. In fact, I think they're 18th in League One this time, or like bottom, so to speak.
Yeah.
Not a very good time. Finally, we start getting a bit of a turnaround here. Laurent, let's see how hard it is to keep up with these managers. Fabio Grosso gets replaced. Pierre Sarge comes
City in the
in.
90s.
Yes. Pierre Sarge comes in. This is around November 2023. And again, I'm just going to put another highlight out. This is a personal one I remember. Got to think, Cherky been billed for the top throughout this time. He's trying to break through. He's trying to get into the first team. He has done that, but it's come with his side just falling further and further off. The fans growing more and more toxic. And I vividly remember one game, I believe it was against Brest, where he gets substituted, I think between after around half time or maybe 60 minutes. And I just remember watching thinking, he's not making much effort at all out of possession. He'd always been criticized as someone who's lazy in France by like certain corners of the media, and I'd always defended him. And I remember that game thinking, he's kind of fulfilled the self-fulfilling prophecy here.
Yeah.
So finally wrapping up, this is, like I said, I'd say he's low point maybe. He gets taken out of the first team by PSG for a few months. And over 2024 and throughout 2025, he starts making his way back in. And now in 2024-25, there's another managerial sacking. Pierre Sarge goes. So it's a manager sacking every year. Sarge goes. Paulo Fonseca comes in. May I say, not another particularly good coach. And it comes to pressing, I could say that's what got him sacked at Milan to a certain extent.
Yeah.
But regardless, Cherky is now the first team player. He's like taken time to get back into the team after having a bit of a low point. His dribbles attempted have come a lot like much further down. He's just got a bit more of a defined role, I'd say in the team. And Lyon, of course, have become more upward. They qualified for the Europa League last year. Pierre Sarge rescued their season, and this year as well. Sarge got sacked, but it wasn't like they were near the relegation zone. It was just John texted the owner, quite annoyed that they were so far off the Champions League spaces.
Yeah.
So to wrap it up, a really tumultuous career history for Rayan Cherki. but it has, I'd say, had a bit of a happy ending despite a lot of low points.
So TLDR basically, it's just been chaos at Lyon, and he's been
Mm.
a young, talented player who probably needs consistency, probably needs that kind of footballer. You really need you need a settled base around you, don't you? Really to sort of thrive and learn from the best in the coach. And it feels like it's just been chaos. And when you're the young superstar and everyone looks at you, it's very hard. And so this season, it has been it's clicked. Is there anything particularly in reason you think it's clicked this season for him?
I think it comes down to, like I said before, that sort of
Just
defined structure
yeah.
and a bit of maturity for him as well.
He's
Like you
yeah, he's
said,
a little bit older now, obviously, isn't he? Not he's still young, but compared to where he was, obviously, that's how time works, obviously. But
yeah,
uh,
exactly. Like he was getting treated as like a rotational first team player when he's 17, 18 years
yeah,
old. And regardless of how talented he was, I think to really break it down, I think what's always been obvious about Cherki is he's one of the best dribblers in the world. Like in terms of close
yeah.
control, he's genuinely two-footed. Favorite stat I put out the other day is that Rayan Cherki took the same amount of shots with his left and right foot last season, which is just beyond bonkers.
I'd
Um,
love to hear that. As a City fan who watches his players not shoot at any opportunity because they want to get on the other forward, they want to pass it on. Shoot! That's music to my ears, honestly.
Well, shoot is something that Chucky's done a lot better this season, as well as assisting. I just think he's all, like I said, he's always been this incredible dribbler, this incredible technique. I think what's taken a little while to come is consistently finding teammates in the box,
Yeah,
consistently hitting the target with shots. I think his shooting still needs a bit of work. Maybe we'll touch on that. Um, and yeah, like I said before, a clearly defined role. He is the floating 10 in Lyon's system. They've played a 4-2-3-1 throughout the year. And regardless if he's positioned in quotes left, right, or down the middle, he's allowed the freedom to drop across the pitch, and it's his role to pick up the ball, link with teammates, and basically drive towards the middle, and then shoot or pick out teammates in the box.
and yeah, that sounds great. I mean, and it has been a breakthrough this year. I mean, looking at his stats, obviously these are the broad stats, but in terms of contributions in Europa League in particular this year, 4 goals, 8 assists in 12 games, so a goal assist every game basically, and then and a further 19 contributions in 30 games in La Liga, not Liga, sorry, Liga 1. It's been a really, really impressive upturn in his stats essentially, and obviously the proof is in the pudding. A cracking talent. He's turned heads. He's broken into the French squad. Obviously, City have come knocking. But I want to talk now about some things you've already touched on roughly anyway. His particular strengths. What makes Rayan Cherki? What stands out for you in terms of his skill set?
So I did kind of touch on it, so it's a good chance to expand. I think the one that really stands out is that two-footedness, and I
Yeah,
just think this isn't the last time I'm going to mention in this the man John McKenzie, because we've been chatting quite a bit about Rayan Cherki and how he will fit at Man City, and also just how we both scout players. And one thing he thinks I do, which I'm just going to say here for context, is that I overrate how valuable two-footedness is. And he says, you just need someone to
this is
be
John
decent
McKenzie.
on
Did you
two
say?
feet.
Yeah,
Yes,
yeah,
yes,
yeah.
the big
Fellow
man
athletic
John.
fella. Yeah,
Yes. So he thinks I somewhat overvalue like how valuable two-footed players are, and players who are just good on their weaker foot, they can still get by. And that's fair enough. But I would still go with Cherky that when you look around players, when you get off FIFA and get away from five-star weak foot, like Min Son, who consistently takes shots on his right foot, even though he can do it on his left. When you find the players who are like just genuinely do not seem to care which foot they are doing
Kevin
their
De Bruyne.
actions with. Yeah, fair, a good
Exactly.
example. Cherky is one of those, and it just unlocks so much in terms of danger. So like we think of the biggest strengths that outlined before. We think of the close control he has, the agility. I think of his like passing. He's really developed like an ability to take risks with his passing and
Yeah.
execute them. Like trying to play passes between defenders. His flicks as well. He's just like an effortless player in how he'll hide like what he's planning to do. So you think of all these things, and then imagine being able to do it with both feet. It's it's just next level for me because there are a lot of other players I'll look at who like might have these abilities. Just like to name a completely random one here. Not a lot of people will even know him. It's just someone I'm watching at the moment. Hakon Haraldsson at Lille, another Ligue 1 player. He's someone who I also think is a very nice dribbler. Got nice close control. He's also a nice passer. He's very right-footed, and it means he's a bit easier to defend. You can kind of guess what he's going to do, not just because he's right-footed, but because that's how his body shapes up.
Yeah.
He's never shaping up to use his left. Cherki's body position is so open most of the time that you don't know if he's going to play a pass into the box or just chop inside and shoot or dribble through like
Well, that
tackles.
at least a faster thought process because you don't have to think about where your foot's going to be. You can literally just use either instinctively with the same amount of quality. And I 100% agree. I think if you can get a great player at Steve footed, they're going to be better than a great player at one footed 9 times out of 10 because there's less hesitation. There's more options available. They're harder to defend against. And one thing I've noticed when I've been watching the videos, and that little drag back he does just before he plays a pass, it's beautiful. Like he has his tendency just to roll the ball back with his foot, just open half a yard of space. I don't know how he does it. It's such a unique to Rayan Cherki thing that I love to see. And I was also sort of impressed by the variety of his passing. Actually, to be honest, I was expecting. I was because I've not paid attention recently, other than knowing who he is, like everyone does. Who's in football. But I went back to him obviously with the links, and his passing is a lot more varied than I expected it to be. Actually, I thought he was more of a dribbler still, and he's but much more of a playmaker. And yeah, he's very capable of like pinging a pass or playing a through ball with either foot. And yeah, I was quite impressed by the variety of his passing. And yeah, to me, the two-footedness is really exciting because obviously De Bruyne is different. But sometimes you watch De Bruyne smack with his left foot, and you think, is that his weaker foot? Like 70 miles an hour in the top corner from 30 yards, and that I think also is what makes Kevin De Bruyne so brilliant because it doesn't matter where he is, he can whip across him from any angle perfectly, and it's a very different kind of player, but it definitely bleeds into his brilliance. But obviously, they're all the strengths. There are lots of noises around the weaknesses, alleged weaknesses, maybe real weaknesses, I don't know, of Rayan Cherki. What would you think that people pick out as his potential weaknesses, and how do you feel about them?
So there's obviously an elephant in the room here. We'll get to that in a second. I do want to say, like, one weakness I think that does go over the under the radar is his shooting to an extent. I did just speak about it.
Yeah,
Now I think it has improved. But generally speaking, I think he tends to like place his shots quite often, and I'd like to see him add a bit more variety in his shooting, maybe a bit more laces with his shots. I just tend to think he's very dangerous, like close to goal. He's finishing. He's really composed. I'd like to see a bit more in terms of long range stuff.
yeah,
That's just like one area, but obviously, elephant in the room is the out of possession stuff.
yeah,
And yeah, you've set me up here like why in the way of asking. A lot of people will say, "What do people say about Rayan Cherki?" They say he's lazy. They say
yeah,
he does nothing out of possession. They say he doesn't press. They say he doesn't track back.
yeah.
I do want to push back against this, and I do think it is really important because like I think there's been a debate in France about this as well. I think, like I said before, he's had this label for a long time, and I mean, like, on a serious note as well, I think other people will push back and say this is quite often a stereotype given to players of North African
Yeah.
heritage, um, and like and
I've
even
seen it,
beyond
by the
that,
way, already. People comparing him to Tarabat and whatever because I presume it's the same Nasri to an extent. I mean, even I compare this to Nasri because he reminds me as a footballer, to be fair, just because he does, because the silky young French attacker coming out with loads of skill. But I can see the comparisons; they're everywhere already because of you see. To be fair, they do it. Everyone, every English player is apparently the same. So I think there is an element of stereotypicalism there, isn't there? But as you were saying,
yeah,
sorry, mate.
yeah, it's all good. Yeah, as you said, but I that stereotype is wrong, but I don't think the conclusion to come away with, where people say Rain Chucky isn't great out of possession, I don't think that's necessarily wrong. I think the reasoning is flawed. I think the reasoning often given is that Cherky's effort is poor, that his application is poor. So the context you have to give, first of all, is as we spoke about before, reason I said it, his time at Lyon has been so tumultuous. I don't know how anybody in that team in 2023, when they're on to their third manager, when they're a team that won 7 Ligue 1 titles in the 2000s, are at the bottom of the table,
Yeah,
are going to have the motivation, right, to play at the top level. It's incredibly hard. On top of that, Cherky has had, as we discussed, a lot of managers who are either not very good and have not gone on to do much good, or managers who have been like were very good in the past and not necessarily in keeping with modern football.
too many ideas as well. You need consistency. If you have several managers at that age, where's the thread through all that? There isn't, is it? There's constantly changing what you've been asked to do or whatever, and that I don't know that can affect a player surely as well.
Yeah, absolutely. Like Paolo Fonseca, I'd say is a bit different to Pierre Sarge as well. Like I mean, he changes his plans on how he's going to defend every single game, which is, I think, a big criticism I have for him. But so that's one thing, right? So tumultuous time. different coaches, different ideas, like you say, and a lot of these coaches, I'd say they're miles off the level that Pep Guardiola provides. Third thing is on Cherki, and the weakness is that while he has quite a nice burst of acceleration, I'd say he's a decent accelerator. He's got enough to kind of get away from someone over the first 5 meters. He's not particularly fast over long distances. Now,
Yeah,
this is a problem in possession as well. It means this is why we spoke about before recording that I've been quite consistent in banging the drum that Cherki is not a winger. Now, in fairness for City, you're a team that like to pin defences back. You could probably play him out wide for City, but let's say, I don't know, you're Newcastle, for example, where you want your wingers to have a bit more pace, like
yeah,
go like stay on the touchline, burst past people. That's not really Rayan Cherki's game. You
yeah,
want him inside. So, and that's because of his lack of sprint speed, let's say. But also, this has a big impact out of possession. It means when he goes to press, he just doesn't do it with as much intensity if he's having to cover like a large distance, for example. Let's say he's jumping from, think of being in line with a 6 yard box to an opposition fullback. Saying he's
mhm,
making that jump, someone else might be able to do that, apply enough pressure to cause the fullback to go long. Cherki is just a bit slower, and that fullback isn't under as much pressure, and it means he can play out. And I think that's
yeah,
a big reason why Cherki's defensive numbers are so low. I suspect I think he's like we don't get often get access to like the advanced data. I wouldn't be surprised if his pressures per 90 are decent. It's just his pressure success rate is very low. It's
yeah.
just because he's not able to apply as much intensity as more faster players over long distances.
Yeah, Momish, for example, who's a lot more, he's got a lot more vigor to his pressing style and aggression. Someone like that, and that's the impression I got from him. He looks like he's quite like a stocky lad as well, isn't he? In general, he's quite a broad lad for. I'm not sure about his general fitness, but he's the kind of guy who just looks like he wouldn't be good at pressing. That sounds a bit harsh, but you know what I mean by that. He's quite stocky and like he doesn't look like the guy who wants to run intensely for 90 minutes. There's nothing wrong with that because not every player is built that way. But to me, like I'm leaning on based off everything you just said. I'm hoping the stability. Pep Guardiola. There is no manager who's more structured in world football. There's no manager who's more who can carry a conversation, carry an argument. Sorry, stronger than him. He has that authority. He has that that weight of his charisma, his personality. To if he says something, you're going to do it. And I personally take. And I was going to lead on to Pep style in a bit, which we'll sort of touch on it a bit longer. But I get um, a lot of hope from the idea that Ryan Cherki knows who Guardiola is, knows what he's going to want from him, knows where City are going and the problems he had last season, yeah, and he still wants to play for Manchester City. That to me suggests someone who wants to take himself out of a preconceived comfort zone that people would say about how he wants to play because that you don't go at City expecting that to work, do you? Everyone knows it's going to have to happen. That you have to work and work and work. Otherwise, you can be £100 million Jack Grealish and left out the Club World Cup squad. It doesn't mean essentially no one is safe. So he knows what he's getting himself in for, if that makes sense. And to me, I like that because that to me shows belief in his ability, belief in his confidence to make it a City and work on his game essentially, and be the best he can be. But in terms of like quickly, obviously we touched on a lot of things there. You know, I guess I'm going to put these two together actually because I was going to ask you about his best position really, but they also bleeds into the next question about does he suit Pep's style, and I guess those two are sort of intrinsically linked anyway because his best position is irrelevant until we answer, does he suit Pep's style? Because I guess what's his best position in Pep's style, I guess is a better question, like where do you see, him at his best and how would you see him at his best under Guardiola?
Yeah, it's a really good question. I do find it a little difficult to answer just in terms of the in possession stuff, but just because City are doing a lot this summer.
Yes, yeah.
I think a lot of people suspect they're going to line up in this kind of 4-2-2 system Guardiola was using a bit towards the end of the season, but it's Guardiola. I don't know. He might go for something very different. That
It
may have just
looks
been.
like we are going to sign 𝙏𝙬𝙨𝙩𝙬𝙚, by the way. That seems nailed. And I think that to me implies, overlapping fullback for the first time in God knows how long for
Mm.
Manchester. But they could be inverted. But, I think we'll probably do that, which means Marmoush or Cherki on the left will probably stay central. It's just a bit of context maybe for this question.
Yeah,
Could it be hard? Yeah.
yeah. But like, there's also a big question because if Turkey playing as like a wide 10, for example, I think is going to be different than let's say if he was a guy in a 4-2-3-1 to so to speak, just like the lone 10 he had two maybe wider players either side of him. Of course, like the fullbacks come into this in different ways, as you say. Um, yeah, like I think broadly speaking, though, Cherki's fit at City is getting him in the half space, in central areas, like basically, I'd say away from the touchline. I want to make sure that I'm clear. Like, I'm not saying he'd be bad out there. I'm saying he'd still be pretty good out there.
It's
It's just his
optimize
best,
him, yeah.
yeah, his best areas are in the middle. But I think the reason you've merged these questions, right, is does he fit Pep's style? Well, Pep's style, we know, is trying to dominate territory as much as possible, push teams back, and keep the ball near the opposition's goal. And if you can keep the ball around there and wear them down and create chance after chance, then you'll get your goals. Of course, to do that, you need to have a good press, or you need to have a good counter press. It doesn't necessarily need to be intense. And again, I'll say I mentioned again, being John McKenzie had a good chat about this today about what Pep actually needs from his press. You know, it's not like Liverpool where you're having to make like lung busting runs all the time. You
Yeah.
just need to be able to force the opposition to go long. But in order to do that, you do need, I'd say, some intensity. And that's the question of where Cherki fits in. So my brain, for example, we spoke about earlier, if you were to play Cherki as, so to speak, a wide 10, maybe you want to make sure he doesn't have a large distance between him and the opposition fullback. Because,
Yeah.
as we said, if he can't cover that large distance quickly, maybe it gives the opposition time to build out. Equally, you probably have the same thing as a Phil Foden, where a lot of people always said, why can't Phil Foden play in the middle? And I think the reason is that Pep doesn't want to defend with Phil Foden as a midfielder because he's not got the physicality to
Yeah.
defend in those spaces. Uh, John also pointed out today he's very aggressive. He might step up and leave gaps. If you have Cherki in there, he's going to step up, probably slower, also leave gaps. So my working theory at the moment is you have him and Haaland almost defending as a two. Imagine a 4-4-2
That's what De
block.
Bruyne did, didn't he? De Bruyne often pressed alongside Haaland essentially as a second striker. So do you think it'd be very similar to that, basically? I would guess.
Yeah, yeah, and look, I think Cherki's primary role will just be blocking passing lanes and only applying pressure when suited. And there's still going to be a huge education in terms of out of possession here. I think it's going to be a season before we start seeing him play like regular games, like playing consistently or starting consistently. Because I think there is a huge education missing from him in terms of how to press and how to defend that Guardiola's going to have to embed into him.
Yeah, and Pep Linder's allegedly coming in, so that'll be an interesting time for everyone at City, to be honest, because he's going to be obviously intense there. I've realised we've got like 10 minutes left on this Zoom call, which I'm using because very 2020 there for you guys, but I haven't paid for StreamYard this month, so we're using Zoom. So we've got a couple more questions left. We'll run through these a little bit quicker, but just finally, like, what do you think Pep sees in him? Like, obviously all the talent, but do you think Pep's looking for something in particular? Is it simply just because of his obvious ability, but because I would guess it's because we've struggled to break down teams a lot this season. You know, we've been a little slower. Is it just the two-footedness with De Bruyne moving on? What do you think Pep sees in him? And because, yeah,
Yeah, it's a good question. I mean, I do also think it comes down to having that sort of that top elite talent that can make things happen against a very like well coached defense. Like they said, we can rattle through these questions quicker, but I would say in the Premier League, I think in the last few years we've seen teams get so much better at defending both high up the pitch and deeper. And obviously, City had a lot of problems last season in how they pressed. I also think another problem is just that their best players weren't playing as well,
yeah,
and the
I agree.
defenses they come up against are so good that it means it's so hard to break these teams down. I think what Pep sees in Turkey is someone who can bring in and go, okay, this is how we match the level of defenses we're facing because okay, they may be very well coached, but now we have someone who could do basically anything against these
Yeah.
blocks. He's the guy to unlock them.
Yeah, I'm fully on board with that. I mean, that's basically a little bit of a wild card, you know, something a little bit different, a little bit magic that you can't defend against that to such because it's not predictable. So I think there's an element of that. I want a very quick like throwaway question. Obviously we're linked to Florian Wirtz. That's not happening. It's like Cherki was the backup to that guy. How do you think those two could compare stylistically? You know, where is Cherki compared to Wirtz in your opinion?
Yeah, so funny how this, if we believe the rumors, it seems Liverpool went in for Wirtz and Cherki's their backup, and City may have been interested in Wirtz, so also gone for Cherki. It seems like we're not the only ones talking about how those two players compare. Um, I think there is a reason why Wirtz is costing a lot more than Rayan Cherki. First of all, out of possession aspect, like he's a lot better, he's a much better presser. He's had a much better coaching education in that regard. That is
Yeah,
going to count for something. I also think Wirtz is probably a better shooter from distance. I think like that's an area of the game where I said Cherky's still working on, whereas Wirtz, I've seen him like belt shots him from miles out. Like that's someone who's very dangerous um, in those areas. And I guess broadly from that, it's just maybe he's a bit more refined than Cherky, and
Yeah.
maybe like yeah, just, I'd say a bit more refined. Just in how consistent he's like finding players with passes and how consistent he's hitting the target. It's not necessarily a talent thing. It's just I guess like
Further
yeah,
along.
yeah, further along in the development maybe is a good way to put it.
And that's fine. I mean, there is a price difference, and I think the Bert seems a safer bet despite the massive money difference. I understand that, playing the Bundesliga and being that effective and playing for Germany for so long and so on. Yeah, I mean, it makes an awful lot of sense. I'm hoping, that City get a bit of a bargain here potentially. And the final thing I want to talk about really is just how far do you think Cherki can go? His potential in your personal opinion? Like, what kind of level can he reach?
I mean, he could. Oh, I need to be careful my words here.
You were going to say something that starts with B and ends with R, weren't you?
I mean, yes, I am. I think I would commit to that. I think Turkey has the talent to be like a Ballon d'Or winner in future. Um, but like, I obviously want to be
That's
careful
the
in saying
four
that.
second clip I'm putting out. No more context. I'm joking. Yeah.
Yeah, you want to be careful saying that because I might just fall into the same trap every journalist in France has been doing, which is putting too much burden on his shoulders. But he's got a long way to go to get there, but he definitely has the talent to be like one of the best players in the world and
Yeah.
probably one of the most memorable players of all time. Just in that sheer raw talent we're dealing with is
Yeah.
incredible.
No, I agree. This is why I'm incredibly excited. I know there are a lot of question marks, and I know there's an element of a gamble with this, given all the caveats and so on. But he seems like a once in a lifetime level skill player. In terms of his pure ability, it's just it's magic. Like it's the sort of it's the kind of player you dream of being as a kid. Like this, the skill, the two-footedness, the flicks, while also being effective. It's just I can't wait to see him in a City shirt, and I've got a feeling. Look, it could go either way, but I think it's worth the risk for City because the money isn't insane. As we're
Yeah.
recording this, the room is going to be around 30-35 million in 2025. That's nothing given we talked about his potential there being one of the very best. So yeah, fingers crossed.
If I could add one last thing, I know we're pushed for time,
No,
and
it's fine. You got 4 minutes left on Zoom. Go for it.
there we go. I did mention at the start, like I'm not sure it was coming up, so I may have beaten you to the punch, but I think when we talked about Pep Guardiola is a bit of a clash for Turkey, I think Pep Guardiola's haters' favorite player is Rayan Cherki, is a good way of putting that, right? Like Cherki is this raw talent and he's going to be given to Guardiola, who's going to make him boring. Want to put it out there. If you watch Rayan Cherki in a full 90 for Lyon, you'll see him pass backwards, so to speak. You'll see him play the safe option so many times.
Yeah,
He is not just this, super fun player who's dribbling past players for
he's got
fun.
the pause, I think, hasn't he? He does that, which part loves. He does slow it down, doesn't he? I've noticed that. Like he's very happy to do
Yeah,
that.
he's very happy to slow it down, but just more generally, like he's not someone who's just like, oh, let me do the forward pass, let me make things happen immediately. He's someone who goes, okay, if this pass isn't on, then I will turn back and pass. If this dribble isn't on, I will turn back and pass and find a better option. That's why his dribbles per 90, in terms of attempted ones, have come down a lot. So just a message to the people saying like, oh, Pep's going to ruin him. This is the anti-Pep player. This is going to be so interesting. I think that's a great exaggeration. There's definitely an element in terms of the pressing that we've spoken about. But Cherky coming in, I think will have a lot less to do, a lot less growing to do with what he does with the ball than maybe people were expecting.
Yeah, no, I think that narrative's got a narrative anyway. I think it's something we need to stop that. People will see the first back pass and go, Pep's done this, ignoring the fact that they only watch compilations on Twitter, like myself, but they don't see the full 90, where he does a lot of things that are very mundane and normal because every footballer of any quality does that too. Alex, you've been an absolute superstar. I genuinely feel like I've learned an awful lot about Ryan Cherki now. I could write a Wikipedia page. It's great. Thank you so much, mate. It's been massively appreciated. Of course, there'll be a link to Alex's Twitter. You've probably seen his work. Thoroughly entertaining, incredibly informative. And Alex, you're a superstar. Thank you so much, mate.
Oh, thank you very much. It's always a pleasure.
No, I've really enjoyed that, guys. Give the video a like. Let me know your opinions on Ryan Cherki. How is he going to fit in Manchester City? How are you feeling about this potential signing? Get in the comments below. Subscribe as well if you're new to the channel. And there's probably a couple more of these videos knocking about 𝙤𝙬𝙨𝙩𝙖𝙬 Rangers, maybe even an 𝙏𝙬𝙨𝙬𝙚 one at this point. Who knows where I am in the Manchester City timeline right now? I love filming videos in advance because anything could have happened. Who knows? Maybe City being kicked out of the Club World Cup by this point. Who knows? Guys, thanks for watching. Give the video a like, subscribe, and I'll see you later for another video in a bit. Bye bye.